Morning, everyone. I've chosen a few things from Va'era and Bo, and throughout those stories of the 10 plagues, just to give a background to what's going on. Moshe was born, Parsha Shemos. Then Paro doesn't let the Israelites out, and Hashem says to Moshe, I'm going to send all the plagues. And he sends the plagues, and eventually Hashem eventually Paro, he hardens his heart plenty, and eventually he lets the children of Israel out. I'm sure you're familiar with the general 10 plagues, you know, Dam, Blaz, Fardei, Frogs, and things like that. We're just going to look at a few of the plagues and look at close reading of the text, and then something we can learn from the close reading of the text. So this is great for Seder night, it's great for Va'era, and it's great for Bo. I know Yael doesn't like to miss out any week of the Parsha. Okay, so the first thing I thought I would talk about is the first, second, and third plagues. For the first, second, and third plagues, Hashem tells Moshe, tell Aaron to start the plague. Okay? All the other plagues, Moshe starts them himself. So let's just have a little quick flick. And so the topic we're going to be talking about is gratitude, and we'll call it the gratitude attitude. So the first posuk we're going to look at is Perek Zayin, posuk Yud Tes, which we would have relayed yesterday in the shul. It's source 1 on your sheet. Vayom Hashem al Moshe, Amar al Aaron, Kach matcha unatei yodcha al meimei Mitzrayim, v'al yorehem, v'al akmehem, v'kol naharosam mikveh meimehem v'yudom. Hashem says to Moshe, tell Aaron, take your staff and hold it over the waters of Egypt, over its rivers, or its canals, streams, whatever the translations are, ponds, over all its bodies of water, and it be blood. So that's the first one. Hashem said to Moshe, tell Aaron. Then we have, for the plague of frogs, Vayom Hashem el Moshe, Emor al Aaron. Hashem says to Moshe, tell Aaron, Nateyes yodcha b'matcha v'al naros v'yorim v'agamim. The same words, Vatal hatzfardaim. And the frogs are going to come up. Okay? What does Rashi say? He asks the question, why is it that Hashem told Moshe to tell Aaron to start the plague? Look at source 3 on the sheet. Lefi shehegein hayaor al Moshe kashenish lach that the same word like mogain, because the river saved Moshe when he was thrown into the river as a little baby, when his mum told him, remember the story Moshe was hidden in the bulrushes? Lefichach lo lokal al yodo v'lo badom v'lo b'tzfardaim. Because the river saved Moshe. This is what Rashi brings this medrash, Shemos Rabbah. Because the river saved Moshe's life when he was a baby and he was hidden in the river, he was not allowed to start the plague by taking his stick and hitting the river. Just think about that for a second. It's showing Hakoras Hatov, being grateful to the river for saving Moshe's life. Moshe couldn't hit the river. Okay, let's move on to the plague of lice. Vayom Hashem al Moshe, Emor al Aaron, Nateyes matcha, v'hach es afa haaretz, v'haya lekinim. When it came to the plague of lice, Hashem told Moshe to tell Aaron, you start the plague of kinim. Rashi makes another comment, similar to the comment he made before for the plague of blood and frogs. Lo ha'afa kadai lil kos al yedei Moshe. It was not acceptable for Moshe to hit the earth, lefi shehegein alav kasheharag es hamitri. Because, if anyone remembers this story, I don't know if you're familiar with this story, when we first learn in Shemos about Moshe's life, we hear a story that Moshe saw an Egyptian beating an Israelite, and he killed the Egyptian and he buried him in the earth or in the sand. So the word in Hebrew is vayit menehu bachol, and he buried him in the sand. Because the sand, Moshe dug up the sand and he buried the body of the Mitzri, Moshe owed, in inverted commas, a debt of gratitude to the earth. Now I think that's an amazing lesson because it teaches us how to have gratitude, but it's incredibly sensitive that we should care about water and sand. And I think that the lesson we can learn from that is that if we have to care about the water and the sand, how much more so do I have to care about being sensitive or grateful to Kayla if she does me a favour, or anybody else? Just think about how powerful that is. And I think that maybe that teaches us that being grateful is not always I don't need to be grateful to Kayla because she did me a favor, so she needs me to tap her on the back and say, thanks, Kayla, you're amazing. I need to be grateful because I have to fine-tune and hone my own personal skills of gratitude to realize when somebody does something for me, because why would I have to be grateful to the river of water or to a sand like Moshe? Why do I have to be grateful to this table? Because it's not about the table saying, oh, gee, thanks, you really, I really appreciate it, but, let me put my papers on the top. It's about me having to fine-tune my own skills and my own ability to have gratitude. And I think we've spoken about this concept before in that, for example, I think we spoke about Leah when she had Yehuda and she said, this time I thank Hashem. I don't know if people are here for that. Everything we do as Jews boils down to gratefulness. Gratitude to the person who helped you, gratitude to your parents, that's why we have to honor our parents, etc., etc. V'ahavta l'recha kamocha, look after your friends, but also ultimately going back and having gratitude towards Hashem and realizing that we are grateful to our parents, we're grateful to our friends, we're grateful to the water, we're grateful to the sand, but realize that we could not live or breathe or anything if it wasn't for Hashem. Comments, questions before I go on to another idea? Yeah, do you understand the sensitivity to be sensitive to inanimate objects? Okay, the next one I'm going to talk about is the plague of darkness. And I don't know if people are aware that this coming Shabbos, Parshas Bo, is something called Mental Health Awareness Week, and Jamie runs Mental Health Awareness Week. And for anybody who wants to look at it, it's over here on the sheet. There's like a QR code. I just didn't have space to put it anywhere else, so I just put it on the bottom of page 2. Please look it up. There's packs you can get in terms of information about this coming week to raise awareness. It's just a little QR code, a little on the bottom page 2. There are packs you can get. Why did Jamie pick Parshas Bo this coming week for Mental Health Awareness Week? And it's to do with the plague of darkness. Okay. So this is an example of where Moshe is the one who starts the plague of darkness. So if you look at source B, which is it's going to be in this week's parsha, it's Shemos Yud Kaf Beis Kaf Gimel. Vayet Moshe es yodo al hashamayim, and Moshe held out his arm towards the sky. Vayehi choshech afela b'chol eretz Mitzrayim shloshes yomim. Each plague lasted for a week, but for the plague of darkness there was 3 days of something we don't exactly know what this means. Choshech afela. I don't know, you've probably seen like films where, something happens and people are like frozen. If anyone's been on an Al Al flight recently and you see that thing with that mentalist, I've forgotten what his name is, and then Leon, he sort of just like stops. Everyone just stops. So I sort of always think about this plague of darkness is like, during the plague of darkness, there's a midrash which says the Jewish people, the Israelites, could go around the Egyptian homes, and the Egyptians were like frozen in inverted commas statues in the darkness, and they could like open up their cupboards and see, oh, I quite like those candlesticks. And when they left, they said, oh, have you got any candlesticks, or have you got any nice like I don't know, fur jackets or leather jackets that I can have? And you'll be like, no, I don't have one. So goes, oh, isn't there some in that cupboard over there? They could like, it's an interesting midrashic story. What it means, it's a little bit hard to understand, but the point is that almost somehow during the plague of darkness, the Israelites had the ability to move about. It's almost like having special powers. Everyone else is frozen as where they are, and the Egyptians were like stuck in some sort of thick darkness. And then it says, "V'lo ro'u ish el achiv," and no man could see his brother. They couldn't see my brother. V'lo komu ish mitachtav shloshes yomim v'chol bnei Yisrael haya'or b'mosh v'osechem. So there is this idea that this thick darkness was like a cloud of, we say something like a cloud of depression, where they were going through some sort of very difficult circumstance. That this is some people spin this off and make it become like, where's there an example of where no one could move because of some darkness that surrounded them? So do you understand what I'm saying? Is they sort of say this is an example of a situation where maybe all the plagues got just too much for the Egyptians, where they felt like they were not able to move. And unfortunately, if anybody's ever seen, there's like an amazing film called The Black Dog. Has anybody ever watched that film? Definitely recommend that. I'm going to write myself a note. I'll send the link on the group. it's a very, very amazing animated description of what it's like for someone who's suffering from mental health issues, where they feel like they're always walking with a black dog that's forcing them or preventing them from doing what they want to do or being able to get up and get out. And I think it's very interesting that the rabbis and then, you know, today Jamie noticed that during the Plague of Darkness it was a very difficult time for people. And what I found fascinating, and this my daughter pointed that to me, in Pasuk Kaf Gimel it says, "Velo ro'u ish es ochiv." People could not see his brother. People couldn't see one another. And I think that at times of emotional and mental health, people suffering mental health disorder, a person feels like "Velo ro'u ish el ochiv." You feel like there's nobody there, there's nobody you can talk to, you don't feel like anyone understands you, and that is part of the pain itself. So if someone is going through a very difficult issue, whatever that issue might be there for the other person. And if you need help, say I need help. And it's very hard to say that if you're going through a difficult time, whatever difficult situation a person's going through, and we're going to talk about that again in a few minutes. But I just think, like, hiding there in the Plague of Darkness, the fact that it was thick darkness that made people not be able to move, when someone is suffering from mental health disorder, and I don't mean, oh, I've got anxiety, I've got a test, I'm worried about it. I mean that it's a real issue where people have, where they've got an imbalance, a chemical imbalance in their brain, they need to get the right help, psychological support. Unfortunately, I personally I've had a few friends, and I have a friend who lost a child who died by suicide. It's exceptionally painful, and I've, you know, especially during COVID, people are all very aware of mental health and also eating disorders and whatever. If you need help, find that person. Don't be the person who's below ro'u ish elachiv. Find that person, and if you know someone else who's suffering, go up to that person and try and be there in whatever capacity you can, without drowning yourself, to say, here I am, can I help you in some capacity? You know, yes, your life is worth living. There is a pasuk in Devarim, Rak hishomer lecha u'shmar nafshecha me'od. Take that, you have to, like, be careful and look after yourself. We have an actual mitzvah to look after our physical and emotional self. And I think that anybody's ever noticed, when we say the Amida and we say Rafa'enu, there's like a tiny little thing. It says Yehirat Som of Anacha, and you can daven for people, and we say Shatishlach Mehera Refuas HaNefesh or Refuas HaGuf, whatever that is. Refuas HaNefesh, you should be healed of your soul, and you should be healed of your physical body. And I think that the rabbis were acutely aware that this did exist, even though they didn't have the right language that unfortunately, we have a very comprehensive language and comprehensive resources. So have a look on the Jamie website if you want more information to support someone, or if you yourself need support. There's lots of people here in the Jolie, and even if I've gone and you feel that I'm the right person, you've all got my phone number and you're welcome to contact me. Never be alone. Comments, if anyone wants to say anything.
It says that the darkness was 3 days, but you said that
each place, yeah, so from Choshech, there was like super darkness where they were like frozen in time, so to speak, and then afterwards there were 4 days of just darkness without whatever. By the way, has anybody ever been to the Blind Museum in Israel? Where are you?
Yeah.
Whoa, that's all I can say is, you know, I have to tell you that I've been there. I went there myself with a friend about 10 years ago. And in the summer, I took my daughter, and she was 14. In fairness, we went to a Hebrew-speaking group, and she doesn't speak Hebrew well. But I said to her, you don't really need to speak. I can just tell you what's going on. When you first go into that area, it's like pitch black. You cannot, even if you've got your eyes open, there's nothing you can see. You're not allowed to take a phone. You're not allowed to take anything. That feeling of, I have no idea what's going on around me, and being in complete darkness, and there's nothing. You don't know where other people are. It's just so... It's very, very scary, and I just think that must have been a really, really hard plague to do. Yeah.
The guides are also, the guides they're blind themselves.
Say what you said again. What?
The guides.
Oh yeah, I know. Or partially sighted. I know. That's why I felt so bad, because she went out. She said, I can't. I feel completely scared. And I think to myself, this guy's blind. He's like living his whole life. He can't run away from the blindness they have.
We come out and we're like, oh, thank God, like there's light, and then it's not for them.
I know,
If
I know, but a
they-
lot of them can see, they can partially see. It's not. I've been and I have spoken to people. Not every single person is completely blind, but it makes you think about. It just makes you have a bit of sensitivity to people who are blind. Just generally sensitivity to other people. But think to yourself that a person who's struggling in the darkness of mental health is effectively blind. They can't see the reality of what's going on, like the same way a blind person can't cook an omelette because they just can't see and they just can't find things. Okay. Number C, waiting till tomorrow. Okay, this is the plague of frogs, which we learned yesterday. Vayomer Moshe leparo, and this is coming. Paro was really badly affected by the plague of frogs. I don't know if anybody's ever heard. It's like a children's song. Paro in pajamas in the middle of the night. I was saying there were frogs on his head. There were frogs on his bed. Frogs on his head. Right, they say that Paro from the actual word, it says Paro was actually directly affected by the plague of frogs. Okay, and it really bothered him, and it was really horrible. Vayomer Moshe leparo. So Paro says to Moshe, please Moshe, stop the plague. It's driving me mad. I can't take the noise of the frogs croaking. I can't take the sound. I can't take, it's like horrible. Like I open up, I take a sandwich and I'm like, it's like a frog in my mouth. Yeah, Claudia.
Can I just ask, like, why did Hashem pick frogs? Like, what's the significance? Like, it's just a bit random.
I'm really not so sure exactly why frogs. Rashi says actually they were probably crocodiles. Okay, he says, actually, who speaks French? Who was my French speaker? It was Noah speaks French, yeah?
No, Noah's Spanish.
Spanish.
Not here.
Oh, so not here. Okay, he actually writes in Hebrew, like written out in Hebrew letters, like grenoi, which is whatever. I don't know why frogs, but frogs are very loud. Lots and lots of different things we can talk about another time. It were done midah keneged midah for the things that the way that the Egyptians behaved towards the Jews. They got payback time, so they never let them have a moment's peace and quiet. They didn't, can you imagine the noise of frogs croaking? Like imagine you've got a builder who's using a pneumatic drill near where you are, but like that, it's like 24/7 for a whole week. It's like,
No, it's like you can't like it's hard to catch them. It's like a
And
very
there's- yeah.
convenient thing.
okay, I don't know if I said that. Did I don't think I did that. I don't think I did that one. But there is another midrash which says Vatal had Sfardea, that one frog came up, and then people.
Each time they hit it.
Yeah, they hit it. Every time they hit it, more frogs came out, which teaches you, that's a completely different subject for another time, about anger management. If you realise something you do leads to a negative consequence, stop doing it. But sometimes when you're in the motion and in the moment and you're like, you lost it, you don't do the right thing. No, I wasn't even going to say that, but anyway. So Paro is completely fed up with the plague of frogs, and he's like, get rid of this. I don't know why. I'm just going to write down why frogs, and then I'll see if I can get Claudia. No, I can see if I can get an answer for you for that. Okay. So Moshe says to Aaron, Moshe says to Paro, Paro says to Moshe, you've got to stop this, Moshe. Please stop the plague. I can't take it. He says to Paro, okay, what time shall I daven to Hashem and should the plague of frogs stop? So if you are Paro and Moshe says, just let me know, as soon as you give me the thumbs up, tell me the time you want the plague of frogs to stop, I'll do it. What does Paro say?
No.
Sorry?
No.
No, I would say now. I'd say 5 minutes ago. What does Paro actually say?
Tomorrow.
That's right. He says tomorrow. Wait till tomorrow. So he says, okay, Vayomer, and Paro says, Lamacha, tomorrow. Is he mad? He's going to keep another 24 hours or however long it was, 12 hours extra. Why is he mad? Okay. Tomorrow? Are you insane? What does the Ibn Ezra say? People usually pray that a plague should be removed immediately from them. If somebody was, when we had COVID, we were all like, we need this to be over. It's terrible. However, Paro thought for the plague of frogs resulted from an unfavorable conjunction of the heavenly bodies. It was like a celestial zodiac sign that Moshe knew about, like we have like an eclipse. People knew about things and they thought maybe the darkness was a 3-day eclipse or something like that. So Moshe knew. So he said to Paro, you want me to get rid of the frogs? Just tell me. Paro's like, no way do I want you to do it now, because obviously you know that the magic's going to happen today. I'll tell you what, I'll suffer it another 24 hours or another 12 hours. So it says he thought that the time for the removal of the frogs had come, like the stars were in alignment. Therefore, Paro tested Moshe by saying, please do it tomorrow. Nuts! Actually nuts. You want to get rid of something, but you want to prove that you're right and prove that Moshe is wrong and that Hashem doesn't run the world. So you think to yourself, I'll say do it tomorrow. madness, where a person, I think this is interesting, and I connected it to the one before because of blindness and darkness, how a person can behave in a very irrational way because they've got like some psychological thing that they want to prove in their minds. Scary, absolutely scary.
Irrational if he really thinks that.
Yeah, he really wants to stay there, but he's willing to pay the price of having this awful plague for another 24 hours because he thinks that Moshe said, I can stop the plague now, because Moshe already had some sort of scientific knowledge that it was going to happen. And he said, I don't want to just, you say stop it now. I don't want to say stop it now. That's anyway when the celestial bodies are in alignment and the moon and the sun and the stars are in exactly the right place.
Didn't they have like magicians? Like, didn't they believe in magic? And...
They did believe in magic. That's exactly the point. So he's saying, I know that you have, maybe, if for us it's the easiest way to think about it in terms of like eclipse. We know when the eclipses are going to be, or when there's going to be like, you know, let's say last night they said there was all the planets were going to be able to be seen. The Egyptians had the astrologers and definitely magicians. They did some sort of, I don't know exactly what magic they did, but there definitely was magic that they did. So they were aware of it. So they thought there was a time. I think an eclipse is the best way. And I think that you could say tsunami, for example. People could explain away the fact that the Red Sea split because there was a tsunami. So we know that there could be a tsunami if the weather conditions are right, or if we know there's going to be a hurricane. Yeah, Sophia.
It says like Pharaoh said to stop it tomorrow because
Yeah.
Moshe said it would stop now. So you
Yeah.
want to tell it this with Moshe.
Yeah.
But the thing is, Pharaoh could have said, let's stop it an hour from now.
He didn't. So it's just, I don't know exactly the time is. It could have been 6 o'clock at night and he said stop at 6 o'clock in the morning. Pharaoh had this idea in his mind that Moshe was like a scientist and he knew that that's when the eclipse was going to happen. Just, I'll say it like that. That's when the frogs were going to stop. That the frogs came and they stopped. There have been in the world, let's say, swarms of lice or things like that. There have been plagues. Forget about wildfires. I'm talking about actual swarms of animals or things like that. And just if we think about eclipses or tsunamis, they have happened and they are a natural phenomenon. And sometimes the weather, whatever, the BBC Weather Department can predict it. They didn't predict, they thought Shabbos would be very stormy, but it was really lovely. So I don't know. But the point is, Egypt believed in those powers and they knew that there was a way to calculate it, and they were not interested in saying that it was Hashem. They wanted to say, oh, it's like a natural phenomenon that you had the inside knowledge, and that's why you tried to stop it. And with that, we're going to talk about something else about where Paro did not want to believe that Paro and his courtiers did not want to believe Moshe was right. Now this is for the plague of the killing of the firstborn, Makas Bachoros. Incidentally, it's called Makas Bachoros, which means the killing, we say the killing of the firstborn, but it could also be the firstborns killed other people, translated like that, because the firstborns were like uprising, saying to Paro, you've got to stop the plagues. You know, they were like rising up against Paro and say, you've got to stop the plagues because we don't want to die ourselves. So this one I called Miscalculating Midnight. Okay? When Moshe told Paro that the firstborns were going to be killed, he uses these words. At source 11 on your sheet, Vayomer Moshe Ko Amar Hashem. Hashem says, Kachatzos halayla ani yotzei besoch Mitzrayim. I am going to bring the plague of the killing of the firstborns at around midnight. Ka means like, around, approximately. Okay? When Hashem actually brought the plague, and this is also part of the Haggadah as well, it says, Vayehi, source 12, Vayehi bachatzi halayla, and it was exactly at midnight. Now, it's sort of like a weird thing, because midnight itself doesn't exist, because like, as midnight happens, you've got like a second after and a second before, and like the split second of midnight, does it exist? And it's difficult to explain. It's another whole discussion. But what happened was that actually, when it actually happened, it was exactly like Cinderella's shoe and when the clock struck midnight. That's exactly when it was, okay? And everything was destroyed. So don't worry about the last part of page 2. So Rashi asks the question, why did Moshe say in chapter 11, verse 4, Yud Aleph Dalad, Kachatzos halayla, approximately midnight? But when Hashem brought the plague, when Hashem told Moshe when he was going to do it, he said, b'chatzi halayla. I'm going to do it at midnight. If I say to you the class is going to start, we'll start the class around 10 o'clock. I'm not going to say to you it's going to start when Big Ben strikes 10. It's like too stressful for me to say that. But why did Moshe, Hashem can do things accurately on time. He can do things on time. Why did Moshe say like approximately midnight? Why did Moshe say that? Good question. When Hashem can do everything exactly on time. So look what Rashi says, source 13. כשאמר משה כחצות, משמע סמוך לו. It's like approximately midnight. או לפניו או לאחריו, ולא אמר, he didn't say בחצות הלילה, didn't say exactly at midnight. That's a good question. The Gemara on Brachos explains and says, since Moshe knew exactly when midnight was going to be, why didn't he say? Why did he say about midnight instead of at midnight? Moshe did so because he was worried. He was worried that Paro's astrologers would get it wrong, and their clock would say midnight and 3 seconds, and then they'd say, Moshe's a liar, he told us it was going to be at midnight, and now it's like 12 and 3 seconds, so Moshe's got it wrong. That's what the Gemara Bracha says. So it says, and it would have been a disaster if Moshe would have said exactly midnight, and they had like miscalculated midnight, and that's just madness. The plague of the frogs came up. The plague of the Makas Bachoros came. If it came 2 seconds after midnight, or 3 seconds after midnight, or 3 seconds before midnight, if someone wants to not believe that Hashem runs the world, they're going to find the tiniest excuse. It's literally nitpicking, like massive nitpicking. Are you with me? And that's just like Moshe was worried they would miscalculate midnight and blame it on the fact that Moshe was a liar and Hashem didn't keep his word. That's just like really unbelievable to think that in the world people would think like that. That Moshe brought the plagues, everything he said would happen, and I just think it's astonishing to think that somebody would nitpick when so many plagues happened exactly the way Moshe told them that would happen. I forgot I put this on the sheet because I prepared before I went to Israel. This is the one about the frogs that I told you about before. The frogs, okay, it says here, really there was only one frog, but when they struck it, it split into many swarms. This is a midrashic explanation of the use of the singular now, because it says, Vatal had Sfardea, and the plague is called Sfardea, which is in the singular. It's not called Sfardeim, frogs, it's called frog. And there's my word in French, Grenouille Belaz. And then Rashi also says it could be a plague of alligators. Remembering, of course, if the frogs were everywhere, people couldn't go in the water and they'd already had 7 days of the other plague. And just the last thing that I thought I'd share with you is measure for measure. There's the Mishnah in Sota tells us, Bamida she'odom moded bo modedim lo. The way you measure is the way that you are measured. So everything that happened in Egypt to the Egyptians was a direct cause and effect. So for example, they made the Israelites work in the outlying areas where there were wild animals, so they themselves were attacked by wild animals. They made the people not have an opportunity to wash, so they themselves couldn't wash because they were covered in boils or lice or whatever it was. They made the Jewish people, the Israelites, I'd rather say that, sweep the floor in the streets. They literally gave people jobs and said, here's a broom, please go and sweep the floor in the park, or in the fields, or in the open spaces. They gave them jobs like that, so then they couldn't clear up because there were lice and boils everywhere. And all the plagues are literally direct measurements. They never let the Jews have a bath, so they themselves couldn't go in the water. And I think what's so interesting, one of the midrashim is when it came to the plague of blood, nobody could have water, but in the Israelites' homes they did have water. And so much so that if I was drinking from this bottle and I was an Egyptian, I'd have a straw on this side and mine would come up as blood, and you, if you were taking it and you were an Israelite, you would drink it up. And I thought to myself, that's the strangest midrash. And I never until COVID understood that how... what happened was, by the way, that the Israelites could sell the water, and if they paid for it and legitimately bought the water from the Israelites, then they could have it. But I always thought that was such a strange midrash that me and you could both be sharing the same water, and I could have one thing and you could have another thing. I could be affected and you not be affected. And it made me think about, in COVID, we could have been at the same party. Someone at the party could have died or had so much problems from COVID, and another person, they don't even know that they've been infected by COVID. It just really made me think about the plagues in Egypt. And so the Sopharno says about all the plagues, God saved the people by using the very means the Egyptians had used to harm them, to harm their oppressors, the Egyptians themselves. God killed the firstborn as a retribution for all the babies that they killed in the river when they made the commandment to kill the Jewish babies. The Egyptian dies by drowning their victims as the Jewish babies died by drowning. This shows the greatness of God in his ability to make its punishment like measure for measure, fit for the crime. And this puts Hashem in a class all by himself, unparalleled by any religion or any other way of working things. So I've got a few ideas that I've just written it out about things like how it was. Okay, so for example, the Egyptians worshipped the Nile, and they prevented the women from going to the mikveh, so they themselves were prevented from going bathing. Just like Bnei Israel woke up, they were woken up by noise early in the morning saying, get up. It was like an alarm clock. So the noise of the frogs kept them up all night as well. They threw Jewish children into the Nile, and the frogs looked like dead children coming back up to haunt them. That's the Malbim who says they were screaming and crying. The Egyptians made the Israelites, just for fun, say, do me a favour, go and collect some creepy crawlies, just to be sadistic. They beat the Jews and they had a foul odour in their mouths. So all of these things. Okay, sorry. Okay, everybody. Well, look like you're really looking at the handout. Really?
Growing spiritually.
Yeah,
Three,
yeah.
two,
Claudia, stop looking at him.
3, 2, 1. Wow. Amazing.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. And no for our sponsors. Okay. Right, in Orov, the wild animals. They acted like wild animals, barging into the Jewish homes, beating them, tearing them away from their children and forcing them into labour. Now the animals broke into their homes and tore away their children. The Jews could not build cities. They were ordered to catch wild beasts in order to, just for the fun of it, and they would be killed in the process. They were told to babysit lots of children, okay? And so they say that when the Orov came, when the wild animals came, they snatched children like they took loads of animals all at the same time. They took Bnei Israel, who were shepherding their flock, and made them build bricks. Their untended animals died. Now Hashem killed the Mitzrayim's animals. They made the Israelites pull the plows instead of like the donkeys and the oxen. So they didn't want their animals to suffer. So Hashem made and killed all their animals. Let me have a look what else I've found. Where's my page? Oh, I've got it here. It's on the outside of the paper. That's great. Okay. Shechin, the boils. They beat the Israelites until their bodies were bloodied and bruised. Now they were bloodied and bruised and they had boils. They kept Bnei Israel working far from their homes and their wives. They couldn't be together with their wives. So they also couldn't be together because of the boils that were on their body. Didn't even give the Israelites the time to scratch and itch. And here they had their own scratching and itching. Borod, the hailstones. They threw stones at Bnei Israel. Now they too were pelted by huge balls of ice and fire. By the way, ice and fire is so interesting because they really, in the physical world, cannot coexist. And when they say the Borod hailstones was like hail on the outside and the inside of it was fire, which is like unbelievable. Now they had to bring their animals inside to sleep with them so they wouldn't be killed during the plague of Borod. For Arbe, the locust ate all the plants. They stole all the crops of Bnei Israel, and now their crops were eaten by locusts. They couldn't benefit from any fruit that fell in the plague of hail because the locust ate everything up. Choshek, they worked the darkness. They worked Bnei Israel day and night. They didn't know when it was day and they didn't know when it was night, so therefore they were forced to have night. They forced... when they made a party, they would make the Israelites sit there and, like, instead of having a lamp, they would say, you just sit here like this. I'm having a party, and just sit here like that for hours and hours whilst I'm making a party, and you were my lampstand. So you hold a candle in this hand, hold a handle on that hand, and that's how the Jews had to sit there. So what I actually put on the bottom of the page, or bottom of page 2, is like a most amazing Haggadah, which I don't have. If I remember, I'll bring it next week. It's called the Cat's Haggadah, and it's got someone's drawn an animated pictures of how the plagues were Middah Keneged Middah. And then the last one was he wanted to kill the Bachor, the firstborn of Hashem, the Bnei Israel, and so their firstborns got killed. Anyway, lots of food for thought. Who can say something they remember about one of the things we spoke about today? I've given you lots of different things, and it's really great for Seder night. Lots of different ideas. Right, whoever goes first can say the first thing that comes to their mind. It's brilliant. Gratitude, right, from the plagues. For Moshe was grateful, and he didn't start the first 2 plagues. Next, Yael.
The darkness linking to mental health.
Oh, okay. So anyway, so if you've got the QR code, have a check it out, okay? And yeah, Rachel.
Yeah, I also kind of like the idea about the gratitude, but like it's also interesting because it's coming from God telling Moshe. It's not like Moshe's like inherently being grateful. Like God is telling Moshe like.
But he's making God, Moshe aware and human beings sensitive to the fact that you cannot ever don't throw stones in the well that you drank from. That's also another proverb, yeah.
Indirectly, he still did that. Like it's not.
What do you mean indirectly?
Like if you tell Aaron.
Oh, he did tell Aaron to do it, but the point is, don't do it yourself. Don't do it yourself, because remember that you owe a debt of gratitude to the sand or the earth and the water. Kayla.
I think you mentioned that some of the plagues lasted 3 days.
No, I didn't. I said the plagues lasted a week, but just the darkness was
The
3
darkness.
super dark
Yeah.
days.
Well, that was quite surprising.
But each plague lasted about a week, and then they had probably about a 3-week gap, and then there's lots of different opinions to how that exactly went. Sophia.
I like the fact that Pharaoh asked like for it to be ended the day after.
But it's madness. It's just madness. Sometimes people do that even today. You do something that injures yourself, but because you just don't want to have the thought that someone else was right, you know. I don't know, even let's say, I just think to myself, let's say if your parents say you can move back home, don't worry, and you're like, all right, I'll come in a month, because like you just don't want to you want to feel like a bit dignified and say, no, I don't really need you, and you don't want to go to bed to say to your mum, no, you were right. Ella.
I like the 1 for 1, like
Measure for measure. Okay, yeah. Well, all that there are lots of examples like that. Claudia.
I think maybe like the interplay between the plagues in a literal sense and then also like more metaphoric, like what you said with the darkness and yeah, like the Egyptians literally had blood, but then like some of them were more could have been something else, or like symbolize something else, maybe.
But it's just an idea, like a springboard from the idea that they were frozen in time and space, like a person who's going through mental health, who just literally cannot move. It's not like anything stopping them from moving. They just don't have the emotional ability to move. It's like they're stuck in a fog of black darkness. Raquel.
I find it quite interesting that Pharaoh would not believe that it would be Moshe, and obviously Moshe would do it through God, but and always would test him, like, oh no, tomorrow.
Yeah.
Let's see if we can keep it for a bit longer. Let's see if we could do it until the.
Or the exact
Insane.
midnight, yeah. Do it. Or complain if he didn't do exactly. So Moshe was worried that the Egyptians would miscalculate midnight and blame him, and then say that Hashem is not. Yeah. Maya.
I didn't know that some of the plagues Moshe did, like Moshe was directly doing, the other ones Hashem told Moshe to tell Aaron.
Yeah, so the first 3,
Yeah.
because of that. But what's very interesting, there's lots of differences between the plagues. Let's say Paro got a warning, or Paro was told where to meet him. There's a huge matrix of things to do with the plagues. Anyway, so I hope that was interesting, because that was a bit of Va'era and Bo, but also keep these papers for Seder night, because I'm sure there's really interesting, I hope they're interesting Divrei Torah that you can share on Seder night. Anyway, have something else to eat before. I don't know what's happening at 11 o'clock. I think Rabbi Rappaport's coming. Everybody stretch your legs. And next week is my last week, so we'll be doing Parshas B'Shalach. So if anyone's not here, It's been amazing to meet you, and for those who are coming next week, I'll see you next week.
See you next week.